Hello everybody, welcome to today's episode of Newsflash. Not much going on in Washington except for one thing, and we're going to spend pretty much the whole show talking about it. It is the stimulus and everything surrounding the bills that are working their way through Congress right now in a desperate attempt to get some relief out to the struggling American people. Just now, the House overrode Trump's veto of the annual military spending bill. Tonight we'll take a look at what is in that and really the bipartisan kind of military-industrial complex rolls on. We'll analyze a little bit of the confusion of what bill is in what package and are the bills all the same. It's very, very confusing. We'll try and sort that out through you as well. Also, Trump has signed this bill, the bill that he called a disgrace, even after a lot of public pressure and the fact that really a lot of Americans are losing aid in a pretty desperate way. And of course, the question is now, can they raise that stimulus aid to $2,000? The House just voted to advance the $2,000 stimulus checks demanded by Trump, and I think correctly so. Also take a look at what the prospects are for that in the Senate as this whole stimulus negotiation fight plays out. It's going to be a long one, folks, and we got it covered for you right here on this episode of Newsflash. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get right into it today, and we're starting with this just now, really recently. The House voted on Monday to increase the size of the individual stimulus checks to $2,000 from $600. And again, this is something that, to give Nancy Pelosi credit, she has pretty much said she's supportive, but really proven powerless to actually get it into any bill. Like, as we talked about in the last show, she said come out in strong support of a bill, and 2,000 plus, and there's a sizable chunk of the Democratic caucus who can get on board for more than $2,000 or some like $2,000 a month payments. That's what some people were pushing for. Some like Ilhan Omar and Maxine Waters, I believe, were pushing for at the beginning of the pandemic. But really, I think the proof's in the pudding, right? In some ways, and of course, and I'm not trying to go hard on Pelosi here because Pelosi has. The proof's in the pudding. She's failed to get this passed, and really the only reason why we're seeing this put through is because Trump had a last minute and again temper tantrum. But of course, the Republicans are the same people who are completely willing to hold this up at every term. And of course, you can only be so positive towards Trump for saying this at the last minute because he said it at the last minute and put millions of Americans' financial relief in serious jeopardy, which is something that obviously a lot of these people desperately need. Like, people are struggling. This has been an absolute failure, an absolute violation of the social contract. The fact that all Americans have been giving is just $1,200 check for 8-9 months, and threadbare, dying out unemployment aid that is very, very inefficient, and really has just not even papered, just left wide open the gaping cracks in the American economy, and it has just been an absolute disaster. So the vote, which reached the two-thirds majority needed to pass the House, came a day after Trump finally signed off on this $900 billion pandemic relief package he initially denounced as a disgrace and refused to sign, unexpectedly demanding that lawmakers more than triple the direct payments. The President of the United States has put forth as something that he wants to see part of this has put this forth as something that he wants to see and part of signing the legislation yesterday. Speaker Nancy Pelosi of California said, so maybe there's some sort of condition that they try to get through the House. Maybe it will get through the Senate as well. It would be interesting to see what Mitch McConnell, Kelly Loeffler, and David Perdue do in the future, because of course, that has huge implications. What strategy will they play? What strategy will they take in this situation? Because, of course, the Senate runoffs are coming up in, I believe, 8 days. And they're going to be it's going to be a really huge role. What public-facing tact these two, Loeffler and Perdue, try to take in terms of how much relief they want to offer to Americans? What is the political strategy they're going to take here? Because, of course, any person with a politically functioning brain is going to say, yes, give Americans free money, like in the middle of the worst recession, in some places worse recession than 2008, and we're hitting heights in some parts of the economy that are lows that we haven't hit since the Great Depression. So it has been an absolutely horrific year for so many Americans, and it's going to be interesting to see what tack the Senate takes, and we're trying to delve into that a little bit later on. So the legislation was passed by a vote of 275 to 134, which is actually supported by 44 Republican members. In a signing the relief bill Sunday night, Trump claimed in a statement the Senate would start the process for a vote on the legislation that would increase direct payments and pledge that more money is coming. And again, this is something that is objectively a good thing. I think is really awful. Also that it cannot be ignored, the fact that Trump waited this long to sign the bill, and absolutely insane that he waited till this last minute to throw a wrench in the proceedings, threatening veto and actually vetoing the military defense bill, which it looks like is going to be overridden now in the House with a massive vote. Yeah, but it really is unclear here whether the Senate will entertain such a measure, because pretty much what Trump did with that video a week ago was put a big double middle finger to Mitch McConnell, and Mitch McConnell probably is not going to respond well to that. Also, he is probably one of the peak top people in the Republican caucus who has this really poisonous mindset that if you try and pass a stimulus bill that has a lot of direct checks for Americans, they will become dependent on the government. Like all this kind of bullcrap about you got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and you can't give Americans money in this kind of situation. It's always bad. It's going to lead to socialism. We can't have socialism. All that kind of just really poisonous, damaging, stupid rhetoric that has really infected huge chunks of both parties. And really, when it comes down to it, I'd have to argue more in some cases, in sincerity, the Democrats on the Republicans, because we see time and time again, Republicans throw any kind of debt or deficit concerns about out the window when it comes to helping their constituents. Who are their constituents? The rich. Look at that tax cut that they passed. That blew a huge chunk in the deficit. But when it comes to Republicans knowing where they need to send the pork to get they pretty much know where their bread is buttered, and that's who they care. Like they care about serving those people. What the Democrats care about is maintaining the norms. All this kind of just really hollow stuff that does not in any way redound to the benefit of Americans, except for a very small few. The Democrats just at this time are really not a political party that has any really is trying to appeal to any sort of broad-based constituency. They're really just trying to manage the circumstances that we see at this point and just kind of hope that nothing really goes too far off the rails. And really what they do is just get dragged in different directions by the Republican Party, and they have throughout this entire pandemic. And really throughout, a lot of the modern era, to be quite frank. So Senate Republicans have resisted increasing these payments, citing concerns about the federal budget deficit, and Senator Mitch McConnell, Kentucky, the majority leader, in a statement Sunday made no mention of the $2,000 payments or any of the president's assertions about the next steps for the chamber he controls. So he's pretty much keeping a lot of suspense, really keeping this under wraps. Republican lawmakers in the House were visibly frustrated with this demand, and really, I think the only way people like Mitch McConnell, the broad-based Republican establishment, that, by the way, they do have a lot of this poisonous mindset, this austerity-based mindset of we have to keep our belts tight, we have to save the deficit and all that stuff. The only really reason why they think that they might go against this love for the deficit is if they think it's going to hurt them in Georgia. That's the only way they're going to do it. And and that's also, by the way, the only reason why we have a stimulus negotiation in the first place. Because Mitch McConnell was like, okay, we need to send just the bare minimum in terms of money to people, to Georgians, to Americans, to just keep this thing going just for a little bit longer. And that was just purely for the purposes of the Senate runoff. That's the only reason why Mitch McConnell decided to come back to the table. And that, in and of itself, is incredibly evil. But I mean, again, it's Mitch McConnell. It's like, what do you expect? Some of the president's closest allies, including Steve Scalise of Louisiana, the number 2 Republican, and Jim Jordan of Ohio, voted against the measure, and Representative Kevin Brady of Texas, the top Republican on the House Ways and Means Committee, complained on the House floor that the proposal has been hastily dropped on us at the last minute. Oh, like the way that the 5,000-page stimulus bill was dropped on the House and Senate with literally, 5 hours to read it? 1,000 pages an hour, baby, let's go. It really, that's pretty much the idea, is the very typical establishment, and you hear this on both sides. You hear this from people like Larry Summers, Obama's top economic aide, and people who are just regular House Republicans. This is not going to be targeted relief. This is going to be inefficient. It's going to give too many poor people too much money. Oh no! That is the big fear. That is what these people just cannot abide by any circumstances. I worry, he says, that this is Brady of the House Ways and Means Committee, top Republican Kevin Brady. I worry that this whopping $463 billion won't do what's needed, stimulate the economy, or help workers get back to work. It's not about making sure that workers pay their bills. Notice that. Very, very key distinction there. It's not about helping workers pay their bills, helping Americans stay afloat throughout the holiday season, making sure they have aid, making sure they can put food on the table, making sure they have a table to put food on in the first place. No, it's about how do they get back to work? How do they get back to producing profits for the bosses? How do we get back to exactly the way it was before, when people were still struggling in incredible amounts? That is the focus, and that is the focus that really pervades all of Washington on both sides of the aisle. So, Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, the Democratic leader, said on Monday after the vote he would attempt to quickly pass the bill on the Senate floor using a procedural tactic that allows lawmakers to advance legislation unless another senator objects. Every Senate Democrat is for this much-needed increase in emergency financial relief, and again, this is the same thing that Pelosi tried to do. Will one Republican block it? Yes, almost certainly they will block it. There is no good reason for Senate Republicans to stand in the way, Schumer says. Of course they're going to stand in the way. You know they're going to stand in the way. Why can't we just put this up for a vote on the floor? But it's just absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. You got people like Marco Rubio, people like Josh Hawley. They're definitely going to support it. And maybe that could push it over the edge. This kind of small populist or semi-populist caucus within the Republican Party. They could try and push that forward, and maybe that'll work. We will see. But it is a very, very tricky situation. So, all right. So now we kind of move on to this next big fight that's going on in the halls of power, and that is over this military bill. So the House is set to, and already has, is in the process of overriding Trump's veto of the annual military spending bill. So the House on Monday evening, they voted to override this bill, setting up a path for lawmakers to deliver the first override veto of Trump's presidency in his final days in office. And kind of surprising there hasn't been more, but really, to me, it's a testament of how just completely ineffective Trump has been as a legislative force in really terms of getting any policy done, because frankly, he doesn't have any major policy priorities that he seems to want to care about and drive through. Pretty much all he needs to do, all he cares about, is saying just the bare minimum so that the people who are already incredibly obsessed with him just continue to remain incredibly obsessed with him, feeding the base, feeding them that nice raw meat they like to slop up and poop right out. I don't know why I didn't include that last part there. But so yeah, Trump vetoed this bipartisan legislation on Wednesday, making good on a months-long series of threats, citing a shifting list of reasons to include his objection to his directing of the